Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings in their Week 11 matchup played November 22nd, 2015 as these NFC North division rivals were going at it with first place in the division on the line. So the Vikings entered this game in first place, and the Packers needed a win on the road after going on a 3-game slide. After starting the season 6-0, they needed to win, or else they would drop down 2 games below the Vikings, whereas they could tie them for first place if they got the win against Minnesota. And so we're going to go over the scores, we're going to go over the stats, and we're going to give our breakdown and analysis for this game. And in the first quarter, with about 5 minutes still left in the first, Mason Cosby hit a 42-yard field goal to put the first points on the scoreboard as the Packers went up 3-0. Then, about less than 2 minutes later, Teddy Bridgewater hits Kyle Rudolph for a 47-yard touchdown pass. And so now it was 6-3, Minnesota in the lead over Green Bay. Now with a minute 30 left still in the first, Cosby would hit his second field goal of the game, this one from 47 yards out, and this game was tied up at 6 apiece. So that was the score after 1. Then in the second quarter, about 5 minutes in, Cosby hit his third field goal of the game, this one from 40 yards out, and Green Bay was back in the lead by 3 with the score 9-6. Then with just 6 seconds left on the clock in the first half, Aaron Rodgers hits Randall Cobb for a 10-yard touchdown. Cosby adds the extra point, and now the Packers are up by 10 with the score 16-6, Green Bay in the lead at halftime. Then in the third quarter, the first possession of the second half, the Green Bay Packers go down into field goal range. Cosby hits his fourth field goal of the game, all of which were 40 yards plus, this one from 42 yards out, and it was now 19-6. Green Bay in the lead by 13 over Minnesota. Then later in the third, with a little over 2.5 minutes left to play in the third, Peterson scored on a 6-yard touchdown as the Minnesota offensive line opened up some big holes for him, and Walsh added the extra point, and now it was a one-score game with the score Green Bay 19, Minnesota 13, as they had gotten to within 6 points. So that would be the score after 3 quarters of play. And the Packers would actually bring the third quarter to a close with the ball driving down the field into Minnesota territory. And less than 10 seconds into the fourth, Aaron Rodgers makes an incredible pass, scrambling on the run. He hits James Jones on the right side of the end zone as Jones keeps both toes tapped down to the turf, and he scores on the 27-yard touchdown pass. And they went for 2, and Rodgers hit Jones for the extra point conversion for the 2 points, and now it was 27-13 as the Packers extended their lead to 14. So now Green Bay up by 14. Minnesota would get the ball after the touchdown, and they would end up bringing the ball into Green Bay territory. They were in field goal range, 1st and 10 from the 32 as Bridgewater was doing a good job, even though he was under heavy pressure all game long by the Packers defense. But on 1st and 10, he gives the ball to Peterson, and Adrian Peterson fumbles the ball as he gets blown up by Burnett and stripped, and Shields recovers. And so that fumble right there early in the fourth, when they had a chance to bring it back to within 1 score. They were in field goal range. It was a first down. They had plenty of chances, but Peterson fumbles the ball and effectively would cost the Vikings the game. But after that fumble, the Packers wouldn't get any points. They would end up having to punt as Minnesota's defense came up big there with the stop. And then Minnesota's offense wasn't able to get anything done. They would punt it back to Green Bay, who would then go 3 and out as the Minnesota Vikings defense, again, a big stop, giving the ball back to the offense. And Minnesota, though, would turn the ball over on downs. And now, with just under 5 minutes left to play, so Green Bay would take over in Minnesota territory on the 33. They actually lost a yard on the possession, but Mason Crosby would kick a 52-yard field goal, his longest of the game, his fifth of the game, and it was now 30-13. Green Bay extending their lead to 17 points with just over 4 minutes left to play. So Minnesota to get the ball back, they'd bring it into Green Bay territory, but on 4th and 3 from the 25, an incomplete pass would turn the ball over on downs once again for their second straight possession, turning the ball over on downs, and that would give the ball back to the Pack. With just over 2 minutes left to play, Lacy ran for 9 yards to bring the game to the 2-minute warning as he went over 100 yards on the day. And then after Kuhn picked up 4 for a first down, now all that was left to do was for Aaron Rodgers to take 2 knees in the victory formation as the Green Bay Packers win this game 30-13 in Minnesota, handing the Vikings their first loss of the season at home, as the Packers are now 7-3, as are the Vikings, as they are now in a tie for first place atop the NFC North. Of course, they'll be facing off again in a couple weeks. The Packers 3-2 on the road. They stop their 3-game slide as they get a huge victory in Minnesota. Of course, the Vikings have been playing some pretty good defense at home, but here Aaron Rodgers comes up very clutch in this game as he ends up putting up some decent numbers, not a lot of yards, but he gets the 2 touchdowns, and he got some help from Eddie Lacy, who had his best game of the season with 22 carries for 100 yards in this game, although he did not get into the end zone. But the Packers picking up a big win, and of course, Adrian Peterson fumbling the ball at a crucial moment in the game, which would effectively really seal the Vikings' fate, as he really got shut down by the Packers. As we see, he really is the most overrated running back in all of football, probably in the history of football. He's beyond overrated. The Vikings line, their offensive line is actually pretty good. They were opening up some good holes for him, but he really couldn't get things done, and he gets stripped. And let's look at the numbers, though. Aaron Rodgers, 16 for 34, 212 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. Eddie Lacy, 22 carries, 100 yards. He also had 1 catch for 6 yards, giving 106 total yards on this game. And James Jones, that phenomenal catch on that 27-yard touchdown. He had 6 receptions for 109 yards, and as I said, he had the touchdown. And Devontae Adams, 3 catches for 36 yards. And on the other side, Teddy Bridgewater was 25 for 37 with 296 passing yards and a touchdown. He also had 4 carries for 43 yards, as he was just 2 yards shy of Peterson, who had 13 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. But Bridgewater doing a lot better on the ground than AP. And Bridgewater, he was playing a good game. You cannot fault Bridgewater whatsoever. He was under heavy pressure. The pass protection was nowhere near as good as their run blocking. But we also look, Kyle Rudolph had a pretty good game. 6 receptions for 106 yards and a touchdown. Of course, that 47-yard touchdown, almost half his yards coming on that catch. And Stephon Diggs, 6 receptions for 66 yards. Wright had 4 receptions for 50 yards. And we look at the kickers. Mason Crosby was perfect, 5 for 5 on the field goals, all of which were 40-plus yards, including that 52-yarder for his 5th field goal of the game. He also had 1 extra point, 1 for 1. And Blair Walsh, just 1 for 2 on the extra points. And we look at the defense. The defense of Green Bay coming up huge, putting the pressure on. 6 sacks for the Pack. Clinton Dix had a sack, so did Palmer, Daniels, and Julius Peppers. And Jones had 2 sacks. Burnett forced that fumble. Shields recovered. And then on the Minnesota side for defense, Griffin and Munnerlyn each had sacks as well. We look at the team stats. 19 first downs for the Packers, 16 first downs for the Vikings. Third downs, the Packers 6 for 16, 37% converted. The Vikings 5 for 13, 38% converted. They went for it twice on 4th down, both times turning the ball over on downs there in the 4th quarter. And then we look at total net yards, 342 for Minnesota, 320 for Green Bay. And on the ground, the Packers net rushing 124, the Vikings 94. And through the air, the Vikings netted 248 as we saw Bridgewater sacked 6 times, losing 48 yards. And for the Packers, they netted 196 through the air. Rodgers sacked twice, losing 16 yards. And you look at the penalties, and this really is what cost the Vikings in this game. 8 penalties, 110 penalty yards. And for Green Bay, just 4 penalties for 19 yards, as the Vikings 91 more penalty yards against them in this game. And the game's only turnover was by Peterson. The one fumble by Minnesota, which they lost there in the fourth quarter at a very crucial moment of the game, that was not clutch at all. Not clutch. Mr. Garbage Time is not clutch, and he fumbles the ball. And so then we see in the red zone, Minnesota 1 for 1 in the red zone. They were 100%, as they only made one trip to the red zone, though. And Green Bay 1 for 2 in the red zone, just 50%. And the time of possession, 30 minutes, 22 seconds for Green Bay, 29 minutes, 38 seconds for Minnesota. And heading into the week, we saw people talking a lot of trash on the Minnesota side, but they could not back it up as the Packers continue to dominate the Vikings in this division. Now they're evened up at 7-3, but of course we see that Green Bay has had a tougher schedule. Minnesota has not really beaten any good teams. They haven't really faced any challenges. And then here at home, the Packers come in and get the big win in a pretty dominant fashion. They shut down the number 1 rusher, and then who really is Mr. Garbage Time. And Bridgewater actually outpassed Aaron Rodgers, but they couldn't get it going on the ground. And the Green Bay Packers, although they allowed almost 300 yards to the air for Bridgewater, only allowed him to throw 1 touchdown, and they kept him under heavy pressure with those 6 sacks as the defense of the Packers gets back to playing the way they had earlier in the season, as they had been having some struggles on that side. They had some struggles on offense also, going up against some tough opponents in the last 3 weeks before this game. But here we see the Packers getting back to playing Green Bay football the way they do, and that's why they're going to win this division when all is said and done. Once the dust is settled and everything's cleared out, Green Bay, it's a tie now. They'll sweep the season series in a couple weeks, in my opinion. But let me know what your opinion is. Either way, whether you agree or disagree, definitely interested to read your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.